Let me begin by just making two observations. Number one, everyone knows that the President of Iran, Ahmadinejad, is speaking in the General Assembly today. And we are in the middle of a very great struggle. A struggle over who he is and what his role is. Ahmadinejad will try in the next few days to meet with the American press in his hotel. There were rumors a few days ago that he is planning to also receive delegations from the Mennonite Church and the Quakers who want to break bread with him. I know that the Anti-Defamation League issued some very strong statements when that came about, when that was first mentioned. And clearly, he is trying by his meetings with the press in New York and with his meeting with church leaders to try and become a legitimate world leader. He appears in the UN General Assembly. He's legitimized by the people and organizations that accept him. And that's how he wants to be viewed. But the question is, if indeed the repeated statements of Ahmadinejad since the year 2005 amount to a violation of the anti-incitement clauses of the Genocide Convention, then he should not be in the box of a legitimate leader. He should be in the box of a war criminal. And I'm saying that regardless of if we ever get to a point of seeing him sit in the chair of Milosevic in The Hague. Clearly you can't have a Security Council recommendation to the International Court of Justice with the Chinese and the Russians sitting there blocking any effective action. But the question is how we in the international community relate to him in light of his statements. Now, Professor Greg Stanton made a very important remark, which I want to pick up from, that there are a lot of people who don't want to believe that Ahmadinejad has said the things he has said. They prefer to confess that they don't believe that that is his intent. Back in October of this year, I was invited by the Washington Institute for Near East Policy to a meeting at the Lansdowne Conference Center. And it was a fascinating meeting because he brought together experts on the Middle East with advisors to each of the U.S. presidential candidates. In those days, you had Giuliani represented, you had everybody who was Edwards, the person who was there. And we had an opportunity to chat, see, and discuss what was going on in the Middle East and what were the various policies that the various candidates and political parties were considering. And I was sitting next to one gentleman with a tremendous amount of diplomatic experience. And I showed him a book we had done at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, which was our first attempt to analyze Ahmadinejad and the Genocide Convention. And while we were sitting there bored listening to a speaker, he pulled out his BlackBerry and he showed me an article from Salon magazine, not exactly foreign affairs, but in the article it was argued that Ahmadinejad was mistranslated. They didn't intend to destroy Israel physically, and that this was part of a campaign to distort his language. The fact that I'm sitting in a meeting with advisors to presidential candidates, somebody takes out his BlackBerry and shows me an article saying we don't understand Ahmadinejad. That flashed a red light in my head. I said, even if he doesn't fully believe the article from Slate magazine, nonetheless, the magazine and a number of other statements cast a doubt in the minds of very smart observers of whether we should be as concerned with Ahmadinejad as we are. Maybe we're exaggerating. That could be a conclusion that would be put forward. So what I did is I went back to Israel, and I run a research institute called the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Part of what you have to do is decide where you're going to devote your resources. And I put together a team of Farsi experts in the Persian language. And we downloaded everything we could get off of Iranian websites to see what Ahmadinejad has said, to see what other leaders have said in Iran, and to see whether this was just loose talk or something that might fit into the rubrics that Professor Gregory Gordon was speaking about. Let me share with you a couple of our conclusions. One of the claims that is made from time to time among those who try to excuse Ahmadinejad's language is to say that, look, he wasn't talking about destroying Israel. The statement he made, and by the way, the exact statement, which we had very carefully translated, was, "Our dear Imam Khomeini," this is from 2005, "ordered that this Jerusalem-occupying regime must be erased from the page of time." This is a very wise statement. That is exactly what he said, word for word. He said, oh, they're talking about the regime. They're not talking about the state of Israel. He is not talking about the state of Israel. He's talking about the regime. Therefore, what he wants is regime change. A political change, but not a physical destruction of the state of Israel. And he's not talking about Israel as a whole. He's only talking about the government, not the people as a whole. Well, to share with you, one of the things we did beside collecting information is we also went into Persian websites, Iranian websites, in order to collect how Iranians understand something Professor Gordon raised. We went into blogs. We went into to download photographs. I'm going to ask that the AV people put up photograph number 1. This is a photograph. The translator is not the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. The translation is provided by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Israel should be wiped out of the face of the world. This is from the headquarters of the Basij. The Basij are the volunteer units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards of Iran. This is from a building in Tehran, which we believe is their headquarters. And you can see, this is not the Zionist regime. Those who read Arabic, it's the same as in Persian, Israel. So it is the state, the whole entity. And of course should be wiped out of the face of the world, which is one of the varying translations of the same thing that Ahmadinejad has said. So we're not talking about regime or government, as has been argued by some of these experts who do not want to believe that Ahmadinejad is calling for the destruction of Israel. This is Israel that should be wiped out. And when I spoke, I remember when this first came up, and we were first discussing this with Erwin Kotler, Erwin made a very important statement. You can't wipe a country off a map without wiping the people who live there. And so it's clear that he's speaking about Israel. Now another claim made by those who don't want to believe that Ahmadinejad is talking about the physical destruction of Israel is that he's talking about the historical process. And when he talks about Israel being decaying and it's about to dissolve, and all the language he's used repeatedly since 2005, he has in mind the model of the Soviet Union. In other words, the Soviet Union was full of internal contradictions. It fell apart. It was replaced with another governmental authority, Russia and the CIS states. And so all he's doing is characterizing a historical process. This has nothing to do with physical destruction. And therefore it's not incitement to genocide. That's the argument made by those who doubt that this is as serious as I believe it is. So one of the things we did, we of course accumulated a large number of statements, and we have seen characterizations that go beyond just a historical process, but characterizations that go to actual physical destruction. And I think one of the most useful is to just show you another photograph, which actually goes back a few years prior to Ahmadinejad's first statement, because after all, these statements reflect the attitude and quotations of Ayatollah Khomeini, and statements that were made by the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. What you have here is a photograph from Iranian television. And what you have is the repeated statement, Israel must be uprooted and wiped off the pages of history. Now, I know this is unclear because this is a photograph from a television. This is a television image from September 22nd, 2003. And that billboard which talks about wiping Israel off the pages of history, is next to and adjacent to a Shihab-3 missile. The missile developed by Iran, which has a 1,300-kilometer range and at present is capable of striking Israel. It is also a concern that the Iranians have been working on the Shihab-3 nose cone so that it can be outfitted with a nuclear weapon in the future. Therefore, rather than this being just a statement of some kind of historical inevitability, a kind of Iranian study in the durability of the Zionist movement, what we have here is a clear juxtaposition of the statement with the weapon to carry out the statement. So we're not talking about political theory, we're speaking about something else. I should say in the last 2 days, the Los Angeles Times also carried a sermon given by Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, in a Friday sermon in Tehran just a few days ago. And in it, Ali Khamenei made clear that the problem that Iran has is not just with the government of Israel, but with the people of Israel as well. This further reconfirms the fact that we're not talking about regimes, we're not talking about regime change, and we're not just talking about historical processes. I could go on with this. We actually have an excellent booklet that we've put out. I asked Josh Teitelbaum of the Dayan Center for Middle East Studies to put this booklet together. I suggest there are a number of them. If you see them, I would suggest you grab it and look it over, because all this analysis of the Farsi language and of the photographs and blog entries is there. I have to add in 2 other statements. In Israel, we also closely monitor an organization that's just north of us. It's called Hezbollah. Hezbollah is many times incorrectly seen in America as an authentic Lebanese grassroots Shiite movement. We view Hezbollah as an extension of Iran, as simply another unit of the Iranian armed forces. And the reason for that is we know how Hezbollah was established. It was established by the Iranian ambassador to Damascus in the early 1980s, and it is sustained and maintained by Iran. One of the key points in Professor Gordon's presentation was how people who are in the hierarchy of the system understand the statements of the leadership. And therefore it was very important for us to see that already in 2002, Hassan Nasrallah made a statement, which we had heard about for many years. It had been popping up in various Beirut newspapers. One of our analysts, Lieutenant Colonel Reserves Yonatan Halevi, went into the Hezbollah archives. And there they have the actual audio. There's an audio archive. You can download it and listen to it. And I just want you to hear what Hassan Nasrallah said. Again, when a major ideological statement comes out of Hezbollah, if indeed Hezbollah is an extension of Iran, then this is simply a reflection of how Hezbollah understands Iran's ideology. He made the following statement: Islamic prophecies, and not only Jewish prophecies, declare that this state, meaning Israel, will come into being, and that all the Jews of the world will gather from all corners of the world in occupied Palestine. But this will not be so that their false Messiah, in Arabic known as the Dajjal, can rule the world, but so that God can save you the trouble of running them down all over the world. And then the battle will be decisive and crushing. This is not against the regime. This is not even just against the Jews living in Israel. This is against the Jewish people as a whole. And it's a statement made by a man who's a direct protege of the Iranian regime. Let me conclude by saying this. We've made presentations today about Iran. But it would be wrong for me to just come to a conference on the Genocide Convention and say, here's our problem, help us with this struggle. We have to, and I think I say this as a former Israeli ambassador and as a Jew. I think the issue of genocide and genocide prevention is our subject. And it's our subject not only in relationship to our security, it's our subject in relationship to global security. And therefore, when we hear about genocide in Darfur, we have a responsibility to express ourselves and to act. I remember when I served in the UN, the Rwandan ambassador came to me and said, you know, we've heard about your Yad Vashem, how you tried to create a museum for encapsulating and presenting the history of the Holocaust. Maybe you can help us. We have a responsibility to do that. And if we see there's early warning about genocide that's about to occur anywhere in the world, we have a responsibility to lend our voice to preventing that genocide from occurring. So we're here in Washington to raise awareness to the issue of Ahmadinejad because he's in the UN today. But we also have a responsibility to fight genocide and incitement to genocide wherever it occurs. Thank you.